Good evening, members of the public, in-studio guests, all tuned in via the ZNS app and live stream. Traditionally, we would have this event in the University of the Bahamas auditorium. But tonight, the University of the Bahamas, in conjunction with Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Phi Mu, and Iota Epsilon Lambda chapters, welcome you to the 5th annual M.L.K. Memorial Virtual Lecture. Our theme this year is Your Vote is Your Voice. My name is Levert Ross, parliamentarian of the Iota Epsilon Lambda chapter, and it is my absolute pleasure to be your moderator for this evening. Before we begin, we must give reverence to the Most High, who is ultimately responsible for us being present tonight in celebration of the life and legacy of Dr. King. I now welcome Brother Sabrio T. Stubbs to give the invocation. Brother Sabrio Stubbs is currently a senior majoring in biochemistry. He is an aspiring physiotherapist. Besides his studies, Sabrio is the assistant manager of the Southwest 1 District of the Youth Empowerment Program here in New Providence. Also, he serves as junior usher at Zion Baptist Church, East and Shirley Streets. Brother Stubbs currently serves as chapter chaplain and director of education of the Phi Mu chapter seated at the University of the Bahamas. Please welcome Mr. Sabrio Stubbs.
Good evening. Let us pray. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, Thou who hast brought us this far on our way, Thou who hast by Thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path, we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met Thee, lest our hearts drunk in the wine of the world, we forget Thee. Shadowed beneath Thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land. This evening, we remember and give thanks for your servant, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who struggled for equality, justice, and dignity for people of color, inspired so many other reform movements that seek to highlight the plight of the oppressed in society. His witness called forth for the best of us, casting a vision of unity and reconciliation that we have yet to achieve. We pray that all those in civil and religious authority be reminded that we have all been created in God's image, and there is an intrinsic dignity in each of us that calls for uplifting of every man, young and old, in the Bahamas. We are reminded of the words of Dr. King. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear. So let us start spreading love in our communities in the Bahamas. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Brother Stubbs. On June 2nd, 1952, our fraternity welcomed Dr. King as a member of the organization while he was still a doctoral student at Boston University. His fraternity became a part of his life. As brothers, we supported him in every step of his civil rights movement. We stood by his side during the Montgomery bus trial and donated funds to his Improvement Association. This evening, we express our appreciation for everything that was manifested from this sacrifice. Coming to give the official welcome is Brother Jeffrey B. Feaster. Brother Feaster hails from Freeport, Grand Bahama. He is a senior at the University of the Bahamas, majoring in economics and finance. Brother Feaster serves as the Director of Finance for the Student Government Association and is also Charter Treasurer of the Phi Mu chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, seated at the University of the Bahamas. Please join me in welcoming Brother Jeffrey Feaster.
On behalf of the University of the Bahamas' Greek Life and student leadership, I welcome you, our studio audience, faculty and administrators, fellow UB students, members of the National Panhellenic Council, the general public watching on ZNS Network News, and all others on social media platforms, to the 5th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Lecture Series, hosted by Phi Mu and Iota Epsilon Lambda chapters of the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. This lecture series serves as the fraternity's national program, A Voteless People is a Hopeless People. This national program was started during the 1930s when numerous African Americans reserved the privilege to cast a ballot, yet were kept from doing so because of threats of retaliation, poll taxes, and lack of education about the voting process. The fraternity's struggle for civil rights show that we have been participants rather than silent spectators. In fact, leaders of Alpha Phi Alpha long have summoned the people towards the horizons of hope. Hope for access to all of life's chances and opportunities, shown most recently during the United States 2020 presidential election. Those who can vote and do vote have honored the struggle for majority rule so that we can express ourselves at the ballot box. Your vote is your voice. Therefore, voter education, registration, and casting your vote have remained a dominant focus of our fraternity for over 90 years. During the 1990s, the focus shifted to include political awareness and empowerment, delivered most frequently through town meetings and candidate forums. Today, due to continued political attacks on people of color, we have continued our aggressive efforts in getting our voter campaigns into our communities. Ultimately, by failing to register to vote, dismisses your right to vote, which is enshrined in the Constitution of the Bahamas, making a mockery of majority rule, and by extension, the efforts made in the United States by our late dear brother, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Your vote is your voice. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our 5th annual M.L.K. Jr. Memorial Lecture Series.
Thank you, Brother Feaster. Dr. King believed that our value as a country should not be measured by our ability to fight, protest, or get angry to make change. But instead, he explained, we should find value in our ability to lead the nation to greater heights. Dr. King today would urge us as a leading predominantly Black nation to collectively invest our time, talent, and treasures for the betterment of this jewel of the 7 seas we call the Bahamas. Coming now to bring the occasion is Brother Kristen Wright. Brother Kristen Wright is currently a senior at the University of the Bahamas, majoring in architecture. He is a youth advisor at St. Agnes Anglican Church and a member of the Elder Guild. Brother Wright serves as Charter Secretary for the Phi Mu chapter, seated at the University of the Bahamas. Please join me in welcoming for the occasion Brother Kristen G. Wright.
This evening, we honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., civil rights activist and champion of human rights, justice, and equality. His powerful words continue to inspire, teach, and shape individuals in the United States and around the world today. Dr. King was a Baptist minister, an activist who became the most visible spokesperson and leader in the civil rights movement from 1955 until his assassination on April 4, 1968, He is best known for advancing civil rights through nonviolence and civil disobedience, and inspired by his Christian beliefs and nonviolent activism of Mahatma Gandhi, advocating the principle of nonviolent protest, affirming that opposition should be tackled with compassion rather than aggression. Martin Luther King Jr. was born Michael King Jr. on January 15, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, to Michael King Sr. and Albertha Williams King. He was the middle child with an older sister, Willie Christine, and a younger brother, Alfred Daniel Williams King. During his junior year in high school, he passed the entrance exams for Morehouse College, an all-male, historically black college in Atlanta, Georgia, where he graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree in sociology in 1948 at the age of 19. While studying at Boston University, Dr. King would become a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated on June 2, 1952, becoming a member of the Sigma chapter. He also met and married Coretta Scott on June 18, 1953. They became the parents of 4 children. During their marriage, Dr. King limited Coretta's role in the civil rights movement, expecting her to be a housewife and mother. Dr. King participated in and led marches for the blacks' right to vote, desegregation, labor rights, and other basic civil rights. Dr. King's first introduction to the civil rights movement was when he led the 1955 Montgomery bus boycott and later became the first president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Dr. King's first visit to the Bahamas was in 1958 to meet with the late Sir Randall Fox, father of the Bahamas Trade Union movement. He helped organize the 1963 march in Washington, D.C., where he delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., to over 250,000 civil rights supporters. The speech was a defining moment of the civil rights movement and among the most iconic speeches in American history. In honor of the life and legacy of the civil rights icon that took place today across the United States, the people of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas are extraordinarily proud of Dr. King's visit to our country, knowing that some of his soaring oratory and his mighty voice may have been inspired by his time spent visiting the Bahamas, in particular Bimini, where Dr. King would vacation. Today, there is a bronze bust of his image at the Bimini Craft Center in Allenstown and serves as a memorial to Dr. King's historic legacy. On October 14, 1964, he won the Nobel Peace Prize for combating racial inequality through nonviolent resistance. It was during Dr. King's visit to Bimini that he wrote his famous Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech, where he accepted on behalf of the civil rights movement, which was moving with determination and a majestic scorn for risk and danger to establish a reign of freedom and a rule of justice. Also, in 1954, Yale University presented Dr. King with an honorary Doctor of Laws degree. His honorary degree citation reads, "As your eloquence has kindled the nation's sense of outrage, so your steadfast refusal to countenance violence in resistance to injustice has heightened our sense of national shame. When outrage and shame together shall one day have vindicated the promise of the legal, social, and economic opportunity for all citizens and gratitude of peoples everywhere, and the generations of Americans yet unborn will echo our admiration." On March 29, 1968, Dr. King went to Memphis, Tennessee, in support of the black sanitary public work employees. The workers had been on strike since March 12 for higher wages and better treatment. In one incident, black street repairmen received pay for 2 hours when they were sent home because of bad weather, but white employees were paid for the full day. Again, while visiting Bimini in 1968, Dr. King wrote his sanitation workers' speech. On April 3rd, Dr. King delivered this speech to the striking sanitation workers. "I have been to the mountaintop at Mason Temple in the world headquarters of the Church of God in Christ." He spoke of going to the mountaintop and looking over. "I have seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, But I want you to know that tonight, that we, as a people, will get to the promised land. And I am happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. Dr. King was assassinated by James Earl Ray at 6:01 p.m., Thursday, April 4th, 1968, as he stood on the Lorraine Motel's second-floor balcony. After emergency heart surgery, Dr. King died at the St. Joseph's Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee, at 7:05 p.m. at the age of 39. Dr. King was later awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom and the Congressional Gold Medal. Martin Luther King Jr. Day was established as a holiday in cities and states throughout the United States beginning in 1971. The holiday was enacted at the federal level by legislation signed by President Ronald Reagan in 1986. Hundreds of streets in the United States have been renamed in his honor. The Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial is the first non-president of the United States of America and first Black African-American memorialized in the National Mall in Washington, D.C. The monument was dedicated in 2011 with the assistance of brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated and other contributors. This evening's fifth M.L.K. Jr. Memorial Lecture is to memorialize and sensitize students at the University of the Bahamas and the general public about the connection of Dr. King with the majority rule movement in the Bahamas, his life, and his legacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Wright. Even while locked away for peacefully protesting in Birmingham, Alabama, Dr. King humbly expressed how we know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. This sentiment has transcended time, as it still carries the weight of a destructive reality in 2021. Because of this, today we not only celebrate his life, but his trial and struggle. Coming now to bring remarks is Brother Ashley Nodes, Director of Greek Life and Student Leadership. Brother Nodes.
Good evening to all, especially those joining us by way of Zoom and from your television screens. It is my pleasure to bring greetings and remarks on behalf of the University President, Dr. Rodney Smith, our Dean of Students, Joe Stubbs, the Department of Greek Life and Student Leadership, our students, faculty, and staff at the University of the Bahamas. As we celebrate this 5th year of the M.L.K. Memorial Lecture Series, under the theme, Your Vote is Your Voice, I must first acknowledge and celebrate the establishment of the newly chartered undergraduate chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, seated here at our university, the University of the Bahamas. The Phi Mu chapter has certainly hit the ground running in all aspects of a fraternal life and is very, 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 very evident here tonight. I commend President Charlo and the chapter for taking such strong initiatives. I would also like to thank President Brother Baston and our brothers of the Iota Epsilon Lambda chapter for once again partnering with the University of the Bahamas in facilitating this lecture. As we reflect on the life and legacy of Brother Dr. Martin Luther King, we recognize that his dream for a better world is still one to be fulfilled. One can think of the many acts of violence against women and children, police brutality, political and social unrest, racial and economic inequality, which paint a sobering picture and a dreary outlook on our world today. As Brother King reminds us in his book, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community? First, the line of progress is never straight. For a period, a moment may follow a straight line, and then it encounters obstacles, and the path bends. It is like curving around a mountain when you are approaching a city. Often, it feels as though you are moving backwards, and you are losing sight of your goal. But in fact, you are moving ahead. And soon you will see the city closer by. As we now face a pandemic that has brought among us a global economic crisis, it may be difficult to see that city or realize the dream of Brother King, where oppression, hardship, and inequality no longer exist. But it is by faith and determination we will be able to transform this world. We must continue to move forward step by step. Soon we shall see that city. As we listen to the words of past President Brother Ward, let us continue to use the tools of democracy to shape a better future for those we will leave behind. Let the spirit of Dr. King remain ever in our hearts, a fire burning bright. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Knowles. Coming now to bring further remarks is Brother Durante Charlo. Brother Durante Charlo is a senior pursuing a Bachelor's of Arts degree in World History at the University of the Bahamas. He is the past president and vice president of the University of the Bahamas' Environmental Club. Among some of his accomplishments would be placing first in the United States Embassy's annual Martin Luther King Jr. Essay Contest. Brother Charlo attends St. Agnes Anglican Church, where he is actively involved in the Guild of St. Ambrose, the Youth Department, where he serves as a youth advisor, and the Youth Usher Board, and is currently the youngest member of St. Agnes's Vestry, where he serves as Assistant Secretary. Brother Charlo serves as the president of the Phi Mu chapter, seated at the university. Please join me in welcoming Brother Durante Charlo.
Good evening. It gives me great pleasure to bring greetings on behalf of the brothers of the Phi Mu chapter, the 964th house of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, seated at the University of the Bahamas. This evening, we are privileged to serve as co-host of this 5th annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Lecture Series, along with our brothers of the Iota Epsilon Lambda chapter and the University of the Bahamas. This year's theme, Your Vote is Your Voice, speaks volumes as it pertains to voting rights and the freedoms allotted to the citizens of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, when so many countries around the world are not permitted and its citizens denied this fundamental right. In our very own country, history has shown us through the struggle to majority rule, just like our dear brothers and sisters in the United States of America, that the processes to obtain the right to vote was indeed a laborious task, especially for persons of African descent. Voter education is key, where one cannot go wrong. Voter education on the electoral processes in our country is vital, and it is imperative that each and every Bahamian citizen is aware of such processes, particularly our youth, who are our future. This year's theme also showcases one of our fraternity's national signature programs, A Voteless People is a Hopeless People, where we as an organization go out and educate the masses on the importance of registering to vote and actually going out to vote on the day of election. The brothers of the Phi Mu chapter will place special emphasis on the university's campus to urge all UB students, particularly our fellow male students, to register to vote and to actually vote on election day. One cannot stress this enough. For those already registered to vote, we encourage you to please exercise your constitutional right and perform your civic duty as a citizen to vote. It is important for each of us to know that your vote is your voice, and it does matter. I close with words from our dearly departed brother, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who stated, "Change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle." Our ancestors fought for you and I to have this privilege. Let us not let them down. Let us continue the struggle. Let us utilize our right as citizens of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas to register to vote and to vote. After all, your vote is your voice. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Charlo. Following the life of Dr. King is truly poetry in motion. Oftentimes, it takes us years to settle on something we are passionate enough to do for a living. What's even more extraordinary is Dr. King's passion and cause was so meaningful, so intentional, and necessary for persons of color in every nation, including the Bahamas, that he was willing to die for it. Coming to render a poem with similar tone and similar sentiment is Brother Leonardo Cornish. Brother Leonardo Cornish is a native of Cooperstown, Abaco. Brother Cornish is an honor student at the university, and he is currently pursuing a bachelor's in secondary mathematics education. Additionally, he is the residential assistant at the university's residence hall. Brother Cornish currently serves as the chapter membership dean of the Phi Mu chapter seated at the university. Please join me in welcoming Brother Leonardo M. Cornish.
Good evening. This poem is entitled If by Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hate, and yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you give your life to broken and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginning, and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there's nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiven minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you will be a man, my son. If, by Rudyard Kipling.
Thank you, Brother Cornish. We have waited for more than 340 years for a constitutional and God-given right, explained Dr. King. The nations of Asia and Africa are moving with a jet-like speed toward the goal of political independence, and we still creep at horse and buggy pace toward the gaining of a cup of coffee at the lunch table. Today, most of us actually enjoy that cup, but it's not just coffee that we sit at the table and enjoy. Today, we've been granted a seat at the counter of independence and democracy. We've been introduced to a global freedom where we can travel, shake hands, exchange greetings, and depart friends. Coming to introduce our featured speaker for tonight's memorial is Brother M.L.K. Russell. Brother M.L.K. Russell hails from the islands of Andros. He is a senior at the university, pursuing a bachelor's degree in tourism management with a focus on travel and aviation. Brother Russell is a Dean's List Scholar, the recipient student of the award from the Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Culture, and he has also received the Most Outstanding Male Student Award. He is a youth parliamentarian, a nominee in the Alpha Phi Alpha's annual Honors Day Convocation, and a member of the National Society of Leadership and Success, in which he holds the National Engaged Leader Award. Currently, Brother Russell serves as a charter vice president and the historian of the Phi Mu chapter seated at the university. Please help me welcome Brother M.L.K. Russell.
This evening, I have the esteemed pleasure of introducing to you our keynote speaker for this event, Brother Dr. Everett B. Ward. Dr. Everett B. Ward, PhD, an educator, public administrator, and humanitarian with more than 35 years of national experience, served as the 11th president of St. Augustine's University, North Carolina, state government administrator, and the immediate past general president of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity, Incorporated. During his tenure as president of St. Augustine's University, 2014 to 2019, Dr. Ward successfully led the university to fully restore accreditation, champion academic excellence, promoted teaching innovation, brought in external partnerships, engaged alumni, and enhanced relationship with the Episcopal Church. Founded in 1867, St. Augustine's University is one of the only two historically Black colleges and universities affiliated with the Episcopal Church. Transparency and shared governance served as the cornerstones of his administration. Dr. Ward received several awards for his distinguished leadership. Dr. Ward has served on and chaired 2 university advisory boards. From 2009 to 2011, Dr. Ward served as chairman of the Board of Trustees of St. Augustine's University. Dr. Ward also served as vice chairman of the Association of Episcopal Colleges and Universities and a member of the executive committee of the North Carolina Independent Colleges and Universities, as well as a member of the board of directors of the United Negro College Fund. Prior to serving St. Augustine's University, Dr. Ward served as director of historically Black colleges and university, minority institutions of higher education program for the North Carolina Department of Transportation. In this role, Dr. Ward worked with university chancellors, faculty, and staff in the areas of transportation, curriculum development, research initiatives, and professional development. Dr. Ward served on the Federal Highway Administration, HBCU, MIHE work group. As general president of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Dr. Ward led the 200,000 plus member organization from 2017 to 2020. Founded in 1906, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity is the oldest collegiate fraternity incorporated by African American men. The fraternity membership has included such notable leaders as Dr. W.E. Du Bois, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., U.S. Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall, and Congressman Adam Clayton Powell. Recognized nationally for his public service, Dr. Ward serves on several national, regional, and statewide boards to advance opportunities for citizens throughout the United States. He's a former member of the Democratic National Committee, where he served as vice chairman of the DNC Black Caucus. Dr. Ward made history in 1989 by becoming the first African American to serve as executive director of the North Carolina Democratic Party. Dr. Ward is a frequent speaker in areas of higher education, leadership development, and civic engagement. As a public leader, Dr. Ward was invited by the Taiwanese government to study the political, educational, and cultural institutions of the Republic of China. Dr. Ward contributed to the publication Lead the Way, Principles and Practices in Community and Civic Engagement. His research focus includes African American leadership and civic engagement. Dr. Ward is president of the Blackno Group, a public affairs company focused on strategic partnership collaboration in the areas of higher education, as well as state and federal government. Dr. Ward led a delegation of Alpha Phi Alpha men to the Bahamas in 2019, immediately after Hurricane Dorian, to witness firsthand the destruction of the homes of Alpha Phi Alpha brothers in Grand Bahama. After meeting with the Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister and other government officials, he mobilized the fraternity to provide support to our brothers. And to date, more than 50,000 from the fraternity's general account, the Southern region, the Florida District, and Alpha Brothers globally has been donated to Alpha Phi Alpha Brothers in Freeport and Abaco. Dr. Ward earned his Bachelor of Arts degree from St. Augustine's University, his Master of Arts degree from North Carolina State University, and PhD from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. Dr. Ward was a North Carolina A&T State University Wardham Scholar and a member of the Honor Society of Phi Kappa Phi and the Golden Key International Honor Society. Dr. Ward holds membership in Sigma Phi Fraternity, the Boule, the 100 Black Men Incorporated, and life membership in Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. He is a lifelong member of Davie Street Presbyterian Church, Raleigh, North Carolina, where he is a ruling elder. During Dr. Ward's presidency of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, he incorporated King's urgent call for action on civil rights in his Alpha Phi Alpha national theme, Urgency of Now. As chairman of Alpha Phi Alpha, Alpha Advocacy Alliance, Dr. Ward will continue to actively advocate on behalf of causes affecting the African American community, specifically men of color, preserving historically Black colleges and universities, and mentoring a new generation of leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, I now present to you, from Raleigh, North Carolina, the keynote speaker for our 5th M.L.K. Memorial Lecture, Brother Dr. Everett B. Ward.
When the history books are written in the future, somebody will have to say, there lived a race of people, of Black people, fleecy locks and Black complexion, a people who had the moral courage to stand up for their rights, and thereby they injected a new meaning into the veins of history and of civilization. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, 1957. Brother Russell, thank you for that generous introduction and the opportunity to join you virtually as we commemorate the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The privilege to join you and the members of Phi Mu chapter, located on the campus of the University of the Bahamas, continues a Bahamian and an Alpha legacy that will continue for generations to come. As the latest Panhellenic Council organization on the campus of the University of the Bahamas, the members of Phi Mu chapter epitomize the lofty standards that have defined Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity for 114 years. To the great people of the Bahamas, it is my honor to be with you, my brothers and sisters, who are actively engaged in the continuous struggle for equality, justice, freedom, rooted in the philosophy of Dr. King. I am especially honored to address the larger Bahamian community because it was here in the Bahamas that our Alpha brothers, Congressman Adam Clayton Powell Jr., Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., found peaceful tranquility and a renewed determination for their fight for justice and equality around the world. On the island of Bimini, they could develop strategies against segregated Jim Crow laws, African American voter intimidation and suppression, institutionalized racism, and economic oppression. We are the benefactors of their uncompromising legacies to stand against bigotry, discrimination, and injustice. Therefore, the world is forever indebted to the people of the Bahamas for providing this oasis for these leading civil rights leaders in their continuous struggle for justice. It is an honor to be with you tonight. When the history books are written in the future, the historians will have to look back and say, there lived a great people. I want to extend a special appreciation to President Rodney Smith for the opportunity to be with you this evening. President Smith, tonight we congratulate you and your administration on your unwavering dedication to the University of the Bahamas. Dr. Smith's student-centered and community-engaged focus leadership serves as a role model in higher education. I also want to acknowledge with great appreciation to Dean Joe Stubbs, the Dean of Students at the University of the Bahamas. And while I know he has spoken earlier, I also want to once again recognize Brother Ashley Knowles, the Director of Greek Life and Student Leadership Affairs at the University of the Bahamas. Thank you so much for the privilege to be with you tonight. As the 35th General President of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, I want to offer my fraternal gratitude to the brothers of Iota Epsilon Lambda chapter, Sigma Beta Lambda chapter, for their unmatched commitment to the defining precepts of scholarship, leadership, and service, exemplified in each of their projects and public programs that they offer to the community. I want to acknowledge Brother Kevin Baston, President of Iota Epsilon Lambda chapter, Brother Kevin Turnquist, the second President of Sigma Beta Lambda chapter, and of course, we've already heard from our young scholar and distinguished president, Brother Durant Charlo, president of Phi Mu chapter, located on the campus of the University of the Bahamas. And to all of my brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity who are with us tonight, I bring you greetings from the board of directors and our 36th general president, Brother Dr. Willis Lanza III. And of course, we are so honored to know that members of the Bahamas National Panhellenic Council are with us tonight as well. But I want to take a moment to thank our brothers for the way you have implemented a voteless people is a hopeless people, voter education and voter registration empowerment for the citizens of the Bahamas. With voter education and knowledge, the opportunity to register to vote, and the ability to exercise the right to vote is paramount to our discussion tonight. Voter education is critical in today's world. I want to also extend a heartfelt greeting to my dear friend and fellow St. Augustine's University graduate, former Deputy Prime Minister Cynthia Mother Pratt. Deputy Prime Minister Pratt, your model of servant leadership exemplifies the humanitarian qualities Dr. King promoted throughout his life. As the 11th president of St. Augustine's University, I extend greetings to all of my fellow St. Augustine's University Falcons residing in the Bahamas. Your vote is your voice, and silence is not an option. 6 years prior to his acclaimed I Have a Dream speech during the 1963 March on Washington, Dr. King delivered a masterful address on May the 17th, 1957, entitled, Give Us the Ballot. Dr. King stated, give us the ballot, and we will no longer have to worry the federal government about our basic rights. Give us the ballot, and we will transform the salient misdeeds of bloody, thirsty mobs into the calculated good deeds of orderly citizens. Give us the ballot, and we will fill our legislative halls with men of goodwill and send to the halls of Congress men who will not sign a Southern manifesto because of their devotion to the manifesto of justice. The Dr. King we celebrate not just today, but every day, recognize the pursuit of full citizenship through the ballot box was a major equalizer for our people and all people of color. Dr. King recognized that in a democracy, your vote is your voice. In order to properly honor the memory of Dr. King and the other countless individuals that paid the ultimate price for the right to vote, we must always keep our eyes on the prize and register to vote and vote in every election. Your vote, you must not allow, you must vote not only, you must vote not only in the general election, but you must vote in local government elections, school board elections. Representative government is the foundation of any democracy. When you vote, you determine the quality and integrity of your elected representation. It is imperative that all eligible citizens vote. We enthusiastically applaud the high percentage of Bahamian women voters. This year marks the 60th anniversary of a bill that granted Bahamian women the right to vote. Congratulations to the women of the Bahamas for exercising your right to vote in record number. Tonight, however, I'm making a special appeal to the men of the Bahamas to register to vote. My Bahamian brothers, like your brothers in the United States, we must increase our voter registration numbers. Dr. King did not sacrifice his life on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel for us to abdicate our responsibility to vote in every election. So I applaud the brothers of Phi Mu chapter as they work under the banner of our national program, A Voteless People is a Hopeless People, to engage the male students on the campus of the University of the Bahamas. Consistent and effective leadership and political power leads to economic power, and our communities desperately need economic empowerment. But that economic empowerment can only come as we participate in the electoral process. Therefore, the Bahamas area of Alpha chapters are encouraging Bahamian men to register and vote in the upcoming election in 2022. To appropriately honor Dr. King, we must also teach the violent historical legacy associated with obtaining the right to vote. We must teach each generation of the long fought battle endured to have the right to vote. Our young people cannot fully appreciate the importance of having the right to vote if we fail to adequately chronicle the horrible brutality, the legalized suppressive tactics, and the outright murder of our ancestors as they experience the right to vote in the United States and other places around the world as people of color. In the United States of America, men and women were murdered for the right for registering to vote. Black-owned businesses were destroyed. Churches were bombed, and individuals lost their jobs for organizing voter registration drives. American democracy, represented by the right to vote, was afforded to white Americans based solely on the color of their skin. And we, as African Americans, were legally and violently denied the right to vote based on the color of our skin. We must never forget that it was the courageous leadership of countless ordinary citizens, young and old, who endured police beatings and other acts of violence for the right to vote. Because they marched, because they faced dogs, because they faced billy clubs, because they dared to walk across the Edmund Pettus Bridge for the right to vote. The 1965 Voting Rights Act was passed, and African Americans gained the right to vote. We must never forget, your vote is your voice, and silence is not an option. Young potential Bahamian voters must know the courage of Leon Young, Mary Ingrain, and Mabel Walker in the struggle who fairly participated and fought for the right to participate in the electoral process in the Bahamas. You must teach them the stories. And in the oral tradition that is defined in the African American and Caribbean and African continent experience, we must tell the story and pass it on to generation to generation. You must explain that once in the Bahamas, that voters would have to go in and shout out in open forum the name of their candidates before a secret ballot was in place. You must explain that you must had one day had to have been a property owner in order to vote in the Bahamas. We have to tell the story of how we got over. Prior to accepting the Nobel Prize for Peace, Dr. King visited Bimini. It was during his visit in Bimini that Dr. King found solace in writing his acceptance speech. The words from his acceptance speech must guide us today as we confront the challenges of injustice in the 21st century. And I quote from his address in December 1964. Dr. King stated, "I have the audacity to believe that peoples everywhere can have 3 meals a day for their bodies, education and culture for their minds, and dignity, equality, and freedom for their spirits. I believe that what self-centered men have torn down, other-centered men can build up." In concert with millions of people around the world, we have gathered to celebrate and commemorate the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, born on January the 15th, 1929. Dr. King would be celebrating his 92nd birthday had he lived. During his 39 years on this earth, Dr. King served as a human vessel against racism, segregation, injustice, and discrimination. My Bahamian brothers and sisters, and to those listening around the world, the man that we commemorate today paid the ultimate price for freedom, justice, and equality on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel. Therefore, our celebration cannot become a one-day commemoration of his life. We must dedicate ourselves to the courageous resilience of Dr. King to fight injustice 365 days of the year and participate in every election. Dr. King reminded us that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects us all indirectly. So tonight, celebrate Dr. King by registering to vote. Celebrate Dr. King by participating in all elections. Celebrate Dr. King by fighting against injustice and bigotry. Celebrate Dr. King by mentoring a new generation of young Bahamian people in the importance of public service and civic engagement. Celebrate Dr. King by advocating for quality education for all children. Celebrate Dr. King by working to fulfill his dream 365 days of the year. On Monday, on this night, Monday, January the 18th, 2021, Dr. King is sending us a message from the chambers of heaven. And Dr. King would say, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, keep moving. My beloved brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha, to everyone with the privilege to call such a vastly beautiful chain of islands that comprise this Bahama land called your home, as you join in worldwide celebrations of the life and legacy of Dr. King, may you forever be mindful that a voteless people is a hopeless people, and your vote is your voice, and silence is not an option. We must never forget that tonight we honor a man, and we should honor him 365 days of the year, a man who gave his life for the least of these. Study the Dr. King who cared about garbage workers. Celebrate the Dr. King who worked for those who had no voice. Celebrate the Dr. King who would visit kings and queens and popes and presidents, but would return to the streets of Montgomery, Birmingham, Selma, and fight against bigotry and injustice. Tonight, we, the living, must carry on his dream. All of us witness with extreme horror the insurrection that happened on January the 6th in the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. But while that happened, we must use that as our continued clarion call that we shall never go back to the days of yesterday. Some would celebrate the good old days where one segment of society found privilege and others were rendered privileged based on their discretion. Well, Dr. King would say to us in 2020, to peoples around the world, never go back to yesterday. Always look to the future. And it is in the future, and it is in the right to vote that many gave their lives. Fannie Lou Hamer, so many gave their lives. And now we must remember his legacy and celebrate his life by continuing to participate in every election and vote, 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 and vote. Your vote is your voice. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you. God bless each and every one of you, and may we forever remember that it is our living that we must continue to fight for others.
Could you imagine waiting for 5 years to vote, only to be told you're ineligible because of the color of your skin? Could you imagine being told that your race is inferior and you are not worthy to participate in a constitutional exercise for all human beings? Give us the ballot, Dr. King said. We will fill our legislative halls with men of goodwill. Thank you, Brother Dr. Ward, for your encouraging message. 2 months before the march in Washington, Dr. King stood before a crowd of 25,000 people at Cobo Hill in Detroit to expound on making dreams a reality. He articulated the words of the prophets Amos and Isaiah, declaring that justice will roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. For every valley shall be exalted, and every hill and mountain shall be made low. Dr. King concluded his message imagining the day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics will be able to join hands and sing with Negroes in the spiritual of old. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Coming to give the vote of thanks is Brother Donovan Dean. Brother Donovan R. Dean is currently a senior majoring in economics and finance with a minor in music performance. He is a member of the UB Mingo's men's basketball team, the National Society of Leadership and Success. Brother Dean serves as the Charter Financial Secretary of the FAMU chapter seated at the university. Please join me in welcoming, as he comes to give the vote of thanks, Brother Donovan R. Dean.
On behalf of the presidents, executive members, and brothers of both Phi Mu and Iota Epsilon Lambda chapters of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, I wish to thank the following persons and corporate bodies. Dr. Rodney D. Smith, President of the University of the Bahamas. Dean Joe Stubbs, Dean of Students. Brother Ashley Knowles, Director of Greek Life and Student Leadership, and his team. Mrs. Kelisa DeVoe Isaacs, General Manager of the Bahamas Broadcasting Corporation, and her team. Brother Kelsey Thomas Jr. and Brother Jordan Manis of the Phi Lambda chapter in Raleigh, North Carolina. Mr. Derek Davis and the Village Food Store, Fox Hill. Mr. Mansour Roberts and Tent the Event. The M.L.K. Junior Corner at the Harry C. Moore Library at the University of the Bahamas. Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated Brothers, comprising the M.L.K. Lecture Series Committee, and My Line Brothers, charter members of the Phi Mu chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, some of which presented this evening. Finally, a special thank you to our keynote speaker from Raleigh, North Carolina, Brother Dr. Everett B. Ward, immediate past General President, for presenting the 5th M.L.K. Memorial Lecture Series held by the Greek Life and Student Leadership of the University of the Bahamas in conjunction with the Phi Mu and Iota Epsilon Lambda chapters of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And to you, our viewing audience, thank you.
Thank you, Brother Dean. Studio audience, all those tuned in through television and online, we hope that you enjoyed everything presented tonight in memorial of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Today is internationally celebrated on the 3rd Monday of January each year. We especially want to thank our corporate sponsors who consistently donate toward our scholarship initiatives. Your contribution toward our Honors Day program and other scholarship initiatives are not only appreciated by us, but by the young persons, parents, and families that may not have otherwise had the opportunity to enhance their child's scholarship journey. We look forward to your generous donations and partnerships this year, and we want to encourage you to reach out to us to find out exactly how you can contribute in 2021. We strongly encourage you to register and to vote in the upcoming general elections. Every single vote counts, and every voice matters. We also ask that you continue to follow COVID protocols by washing your hands, social distancing, and wearing your masks around others. Once again, my name is Levert Ross, and it has been an absolute pleasure to moderate for you our 5th annual M.L.K. Memorial Lecture. We look forward to seeing you on January 17th, 2022. Studio guests, all tuned in by television and online, thank you and good night.